What if I told you that one single item in your room, something you thought was harmless, could be silently blocking the graces of the Virgin Mary in the holiest days of May? What if the very object you keep in your room, believing it offers comfort or meaning, is actually blocking the graces meant to reach you this month? What if, without knowing it, you've invited a silence into your spiritual space? A silence not from heaven, but from something that keeps heaven out. In May, a time when the Church turns its gaze toward the Virgin Mary, every home becomes a battleground between light and subtle shadows. Padre Pio, a man who saw beyond the visible, warned that some items, though small and common, carry a spiritual weight that disrupts the flow of grace. He believed that what we place near our beds, our altars, our hearts, shapes what enters our lives. Many devout souls decorate their rooms with good intentions, but intentions are not enough when discernment is lacking. Just as prayer opens a door to heaven, so too can a careless object become a crack through which confusion, heaviness, or even spiritual dryness enter. It is not fear-mongering, it is vigilance. And in a time of spiritual noise, vigilance is love. Before May 13th, a day marked by heavenly visits and maternal warnings, every believer is invited to examine their space, not with suspicion, but with prayerful clarity. The Virgin is watching, not to accuse, but to protect. But protection begins with awareness, and sometimes that means removing what you never questioned. There are objects that carry memories, objects that symbolize hope, and objects that quietly interrupt the flow of divine grace. Padre Pio spoke often of the unseen spiritual weight certain items carry, things that seem harmless, even holy, yet act as veils between the soul and heaven. In particular, he warned about religious items that are either counterfeit, mass-produced, without reverence, or obtained from unblessed, impure sources. These are not simple decorations, they are spiritual signals. A rosary bought at a tourist stall without blessing, a statue designed more for aesthetic than devotion, or a candle inscribed with superstitious phrases may not carry evil in themselves, but they do not carry light either. Instead, they mute the sacred presence meant to dwell in a consecrated space. He emphasized that objects close to us, above our beds, beside our prayer corners, should not merely look religious, they must be spiritually alive. And that life comes only from blessing, prayer, and right intention. The danger lies in subtlety. A believer may kneel before a crucifix every night, not realizing that the image was never meant to inspire worship, but to mimic it. The heart opens in trust, but the heavens remain silent. This is not because God does not listen, but because something in the space is not aligned with his voice. Padre Pio believed that everything in the spiritual life has form and function. Nothing is neutral. That is why, before May 13th, the faithful must look again at what surrounds them and ask, does this object lift my heart to God, or does it simply sit in the room, absorbing my attention without returning grace? This is not a matter of paranoia, but of purification. Heaven is not closed by God, but by what we allow to remain unexamined. In a quiet village not far from San Giovanni Rotondo, a family known for their deep Marian devotion began experiencing something strange in the spring of 1967. Their prayers became heavy, the peace of their home slowly faded, and a sense of unease seemed to settle over the house like a veil. It began subtly, unexplained restlessness at night, flickering candles in the prayer room without draught, and a deep sense of spiritual dryness. The family, especially the mother, was confused. She prayed the rosary daily, kept an image of the Virgin above her bed, and lit candles regularly. She visited Padre Pio in confession and asked him directly, "Why does my home feel like it is no longer protected?" After a moment of silence, he asked her one question. "Where did you get the image above your bed?" She told him it had been A gift sent from a friend traveling abroad, purchased at a market because it was beautiful. Padre Pio's face changed. He told her to bring the image to him. Upon examining it, he noticed subtle but alarming distortions, symbols not of Catholic origin, etched faintly into the frame, and the face of Mary, while serene, had proportions that evoked confusion rather than peace. "This is not the Virgin," he told her. "It's a false comfort, a mask. Remove it." The family returned home, took the image down, and brought it to the parish priest to be burned and properly disposed of. That same night, the atmosphere in their home shifted. Miai's prayer once again felt alive. The candlelight no longer flickered unnaturally. The mother cried with relief. This story, quietly recorded in the journal of a local friar, spread later through the testimonies of those close to Padre Pio. It became a reminder that even the most devout can be misled, not by evil in obvious forms, but by counterfeits cloaked in reverence. As the days of May unfold, each hour draws closer to the 13th, a date that heaven has not marked lightly. It is the anniversary of the first apparition at Fatima, the day when the Virgin chose to pierce the silence of the world with her message of conversion, penance, and urgency. For those who live with spiritual sensitivity, this date is not just a commemoration, but a doorway, a threshold, a moment of visitation. Padre Pio believed that heaven opens special graces during these Marian milestones, but only for those who are prepared. He often taught that grace does not fall randomly like rain. It seeks clean vessels. A room cluttered with spiritual noise, neglected objects and unrepented shadows cannot absorb divine light. That is why, before May 13th, a spiritual reset is necessary, not dramatic or theatrical, but deliberate and honest. Begin by entering your room in silence. Look not with your eyes first, but with your conscience. What have you allowed to accumulate? What symbols rest on your shelves that no longer belong to your spiritual identity? Are there books, decorations, gifts or images whose origins you do not know, whose energies may carry confusion instead of clarity? The first step is purification. Padre Pio would often advise souls to cleanse the physical space before they even attempt to pray. Not because God cannot enter filth, but because man is too distracted to recognize him when he does. Open the windows, let fresh air touch every corner, burn a blessed candle or sprinkle holy water in the name of the Holy Trinity. Then, one by one, examine each item. Keep only what lifts your thoughts to God, to Mary, to the angels and saints. Remove what causes ambiguity, even if it once seemed harmless. Objects retain the memory of their purpose. Your room must become a chapel again. Next is the reconsecration. Kneel if possible. Light a new candle, white, simple, clean. Before an image of Mary that has been blessed and gives peace, pray a sincere act of consecration. Offer her your room, your thoughts, your sleep, your solitude. Padre Pio taught that the Virgin walks the homes of her children looking for altars of love, not altars of appearance, and she will not forget those who make space for her in sincerity before the 13th of May. This is not superstition. This is spiritual architecture. A soul that resets itself becomes a beacon, and a room that honors Mary becomes ground where heaven rests its gaze. There are moments in the Church's calendar when heaven leans closer to earth. May 13th is one of those moments, not just because of Fatima, but because the Virgin Mary continues to watch, visit, and wait. Padre Pio always reminded the faithful that the state of our soul and the state of our home are not separate. One reflects the other. What you keep in your room can either welcome light or cast a spiritual shadow. As this sacred date approaches, it is not too late to act. Begin with humility. Remove what does not belong. Consecrate your space. Light A candle with intention, and above all, return your gaze to the mother who never stopped watching. She does not demand perfection, only sincerity. If you feel far from grace, step closer now. This is your moment. Cleanse your space. Prepare your heart and whisper, even if faintly, Mother, I am ready. Heaven will hear. There are moments in the Church's calendar when heaven leans closer to earth. May 13th is one of those moments, not just because of Fatima, but because the Virgin Mary continues to watch, visit, and wait. Padre Pio always reminded the faithful that the state of our soul and the state of our home are not separate. One reflects the other. What you keep in your room can either welcome light or cast a spiritual shadow. As this sacred date approaches, it is not too late to act. Begin with humility. Remove what does not belong. Consecrate your space. Light a candle with intention, and above all, return your gaze to the mother who never stopped watching. She does not demand perfection, only sincerity. If you feel far from grace, step closer now. This is your moment. Cleanse your space. Prepare your heart and whisper, even if faintly, Mother, I am ready. Heaven will hear.